Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the latest webinar from Backing Brentwood Business, brought to you by Brentwood Chamber of Commerce, Brentwood Business Partnership, and Brentwood Borough Council. And this afternoon's guest is Kevin Gordon from Digital Technology Labs, who's going to be talking to you on the subject of, is your website working? My name is Colin Barber, and I'm chairman of Brentwood Chamber of Commerce. And I also run a business called The Management Mechanic, which is a business connected to communication skills, and I work as a trainer, coach and consultant. My specialist area is psychology and understanding how people work. So I'd like to thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. If it is your first webinar with us, then you're very welcome, and if you've seen some of the others, then it's good to have you back. Just a reminder, which I will tell you again later after the webinar, it is being recorded, so if you do want to watch it again, or if you have to drop out halfway through the webinar, then there will be an opportunity for you to watch it again on YouTube. It should be uploaded on YouTube sometime tomorrow afternoon. Also worth mentioning that all the webinars which we've had so far are all available to view on the Brentwood Chamber of Commerce YouTube page as well. So I hope you enjoy the session. I hope you find it useful. The format of today's session is very much me talking to Kevin about websites, and in order to do that, in order to cover the sort of subjects which you want covered, I'm very keen for you to supply me with some questions. Just to familiarise yourself with the Zoom layout, there's a couple of buttons which you can use. The video button is just the only video you'll see is myself and Kevin, so you're all muted from that point of view, and the only people you'll hear are myself and Kevin. But if you want to communicate with us, then the two buttons to use are the Q&A button and the chat button. So if you've got any questions, anything to do with websites, then please do start typing them now, because obviously the sooner I've got the questions, the sooner I can pick out the ones which I think would be useful for us to get answered by Kevin. Also, if you want to just chat with us and mention anything else to us in passing, then use the chat button. But the main one I'm asking you to use as soon as possible is the Q&A button, so that I've got some questions which I can ask Kevin. Just to give you a little bit of background to the webinars, the Brentwood Chamber of Commerce, Brentwood Business Partnership and Brentwood Borough Council, we have in the past run joint training sessions, initially at the town hall before the refurbishment. But obviously in the current circumstances, we can't run any live training sessions. So we decided it would be useful to bring you these webinars for the benefit of businesses in and around Brentwood, to help you to cope with the current issue. So most of them do have a theme, sort of either directly or indirectly related to the coronavirus crisis and the various difficulties which businesses are going through at the moment. Incidentally, if you have a particular subject which you'd like us to cover on a webinar, then do let us know. And similarly, if you're interested in presenting a webinar yourself, if you think that your business has got something which would be of interest to Brentwood business at this moment in time, then do let us know. We're always happy to hear about ideas for new webinars. They take place on a Tuesday and a Friday, either in the afternoon or in the morning, depending on the schedules of myself and the presenters, but regularly on a Tuesday and a Friday. Just worth mentioning that this week, Friday, is actually a bank holiday. I know it seemed a strange time to have a bank holiday, but it is a bank holiday, so the next webinar is scheduled for next Tuesday. So as I say, we've got some questions coming in now. That's great. So do feel free to ask any questions at all you've got about any website, anything complicated, anything simple, whatever it is. I'm sure Kevin will be happy to answer your questions. So let me just introduce you to our guest speaker this afternoon, who is Kevin. Kevin, are you there? Would you like to turn your video on and introduce yourself to us?
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Kevin.
Hi. Hi, my name is Kevin. Yeah, as you said. Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Good. We can hear you loud and clear, and we can see you, so that's good.
Good.
Glad to see the sun shining in through your skylight as well. Looking good in there, nice and bright.
Yeah, I've had to close it slightly, or you wouldn't be able to. You just see me in silhouette. So.
Oh right. Okay. Anyway, you're looking good. So Kevin, well, would you like to just start off by just telling us a little bit about Digital Technology Labs and what you do? Just a sort of quick introduction.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So Digital Technology Labs, we're a boutique web development, web design and software development agency based in Basildon, Essex. So our primarily what we do is we create software and build websites, and we carry out the projects to develop websites for our clients. And then the ongoing, and it's never just building a website, it's the ongoing journey thereafter. So supporting our clients, updating the websites, helping with some of the social media, digital marketing, and obviously the hosting as well.
So it's very much an ongoing service. It's not just a one-off of providing a website and then going away. It's very much looking after your clients ongoing.
Yeah, that's a great question. I get a lot of clients come to me and they say, we got a website, but then we've just been left to fend for ourselves. So it's really important that once a website's delivered, it is kept up to date, and we're on hand to help the client, whether it be actively updating for the client or just here for support as an ad hoc, as and when they need help and support. Right.
Okay. And tell us a bit about yourself and your background, Kevin. How did you come to be with Digital Technology Labs? What were you doing before?
Yeah, so I've been in the IT industry for about 19 years now. I got a computer science degree at Warwick University, and I've been working for blue chip companies, as I say, in information technology, digital, and marketing and innovation for about 19 years. Ford Motor Company and WellPay are the main companies I've worked for. So I was a payments professional for 4 years before I went into my company. But basically, I've long had a dream of having my own business, having my own company. I have a bit of artistic flair, and building and creating websites just seemed a really good area to go into. So yeah, a couple of years ago, I started Digital Technology Labs, and that's brought me here today.
Right. So you've just been going for a couple of years. So how's it going generally?
Well, it was we were going quite well until obviously the what's happening now with COVID-19, and certainly we've had to put some contingency planning in place and take some actions for our company. But yeah, I'm pleased that that there is support out there, and the government is doing stuff like furloughing opportunities and the bounce back loan. So and I think that from my point of view, not a selfish point of view, but online, digital and websites are becoming more important and will be more important going forward. So I see that there's an opportunity, obviously, for a company like mine.
Yeah, I was just thinking, Kevin, presumably at the moment, then websites are even more important than they are normally, because it's one of the key means of companies' communication with their customers.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a broad spectrum of businesses and as to why they need a website. But at the very least, having contact details so people can get in contact with you is very important. But even from a company which is selling online or needs to move their product to sell online, having an online presence is absolutely critical during this time. I think we're going to talk a bit more about some of those topics in some of the questions, aren't we?
Yeah. Oh, okay, great. So are websites as important as they used to be, with a lot of companies using social media to sell their products and all sorts of different ways of communicating, Instagram and Facebook and all that sort of thing? Is a website still an essential tool for most businesses?
My answer would be, I think yes, but with a caveat. Certain businesses, I think, can get by or don't necessarily need a dedicated website. There are a number of web platforms and selling platforms that work really well for certain businesses, such as if you're selling something like Not on the High Street or an Amazon reseller and that kind of thing. But for the majority of businesses, I still think websites are very important. And the number one reason for that is building legitimacy. Customers tend to trust businesses more if they have an online presence. If you're looking at, you probably have had the same situation, right? If you're looking for, say, a plumber or a gas engineer, and you're looking for one, you're more inclined to trust the ones with a website. And then the ones that do have a website, you're more inclined to trust the ones that look like they've got a more legitimate web presence, a more professional web presence, and are therefore more trustworthy.
Yes, but actually, speaking personally, I know one of the things I always check on a website is whether they actually display a telephone number and an address, just in case you have any problems dealing with them in the future, because I'm always a bit worried to buy something from a company who haven't got any sort of telephone number or address on their website. So yeah, again, that legitimacy. Absolutely.
And I mean, anyone can buy an off-the-shelf template and sort of get themselves online. But I think what the difference for me, when I look at websites, what differentiates for me and what I sell clients is, especially small, medium-sized enterprises and businesses, is put yourself put your personality across, put your legitimacy across. Don't just have a generic website. If it's just an individual, have pictures of yourself working. If you've got a company, have team pictures, and tell your story. One of the most important pages on a website is the about page. And when you go to an about page, customers want to see, they want to connect with your story, and that you're a legitimate business and you're someone that they want to do business with.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, Kevin. Certainly, I know from my point of view, I do often go straight to the about page, and actually, it's interesting how many companies' websites you read the about page, and you think, well, actually, this isn't about them at all. It's just another sales page. So, yeah, as you say, if you can personalise your about page, it does make your company some more interesting, and it does maybe make you stand out from the crowd. Definitely,
it's definitely it is a critical page on websites, absolutely. And it is surprising how many people don't put an about page on their website, or their about page isn't called the about page, which makes it either confusing for the customer, or the customer might not be able to find that content.
Yeah. Okay, so what about during the current crisis? Are there things that people should be doing in terms of changing their website, or is it just carrying on as usual at the moment and just allowing for more traffic, or are there any differences that people should be thinking about?
Yeah, I think that it is dependent on the type of business you have. My number one recommendation would be for e-commerce or businesses that are selling through their online channels. I think that channel is very important, but do make sure that to be honest, you should have like a headline comment on your website, still open for business. Maybe linking to some more content explaining there might be some delays in delivery, but explaining that during the COVID-19 pandemic that you're still open for business and you can still be trusted to deliver. I'll tell you a little anecdote. So I'm currently trying to buy local. So I was buying some acrylic paints from a company in Romford, and they had a headline message talking about their story in COVID-19. It built trust. I knew it was going to take longer to deliver, but I went with them over Amazon. Conversely, I was trying to get some incense sticks from a company in Borough, and there was no message on their website to say whether they were affected or whether they were still delivering. And I emailed them, and I didn't hear a response. So in that scenario, I went with one company and I didn't with the other. So I think if you're an e-commerce business, explaining that maybe your delivery is delayed, but you're still operating is very important. But conversely, if you're affected by COVID-19, don't be afraid to explain that on your website, and then maybe adjust your opening times, and fundamentally make sure your contact details on your website are up to date. So if clients are trying to get in contact with you, you will be able to get back in contact with them. Yeah.
So just to come back to that point about the company in Romford and the headline, was that like a banner across the home page, do you mean, or that they had about their?
That's one way of doing it. I think what they had was on the actual product pages, there was a message saying COVID-19 may affect our delivery times.
Right.
And then that linked through to a page explaining the situation.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it is really a preference or a choice, how obvious you want it to be. But I feel that to build trust, that's especially for an e-com business, it's important to have messaging on that space.
Right. Presumably, even during normal times of trading, it's quite a good idea to have sort of messages flashing up on your screen just to show people that you've updated your website and that it's not something that you just put up there 2 years ago. So something which shows that your website is still up to date and topical.
That's a really good question. So this leads to keeping your website fresh, keeping content on your website, using your website as a platform so you can share content. From search engine optimization point of view, and I'm sure we'll get into that in more detail, keeping your website fresh does benefit you, because it keeps you either organically coming up the search rankings, or it helps you get indexed well on Google. But from a trustworthiness point of view, if you have content on your website, it is refreshed, a client knows that you're regularly updating your website, so that builds trust. This leads to the blog sections. So some clients say to me they really want a blog, but I do sometimes advise clients against having a blog on their website. And the reason being is because having a blog, you are committing to being a content creator and creating a degree of content. And I always recommend you should be blogging at least once a month. And that is quite a lot of commitment, especially for a small business. If you don't do that, then there's nothing worse than having a blog than an empty blog, or a blog that hasn't been updated since 2017 or something like that. So I mean, there are lots of other small businesses or other businesses, especially in the area and Brentwood Chamber, that can help support that. And there are some businesses where the sweet spot is creating content for blogs. So that is really important. And that is, I would say, is to build legitimacy and that trustworthiness with clients, but also the added benefits of SEO and organic search as well. And then the third thing is, obviously, if you're creating content, if you're a content creator and you're creating content on your website, that's something you can share through your social media channels, and potentially do further stuff with them in terms of funnels and content management and that kind of thing.
So are blogs more suitable for certain types of businesses rather than others? Because you know you don't always recommend it.
I mean, yeah, that's a great question. I think certain businesses are excluded from really actively blogging. Those that are financially regulated, I know that it's certainly challenging because they have to run everything by their compliance officers and stuff like that. So there's a cost involved. There a lot of businesses, I think blogging can be really beneficial to show your personality, to give value to your customers. I think it also circles back to the question you had earlier: is a website the right platform? I would say that it is, but it's also complementary. And some people, blogging might not be the right platform. The website might be critical, but that maybe they would choose to share their content through a platform such as Instagram, product photos maybe, or the photography, or maybe a Facebook page or LinkedIn or something like that. What I would say is, I personally don't think there's one size that fits all. And I think you have to look at what's right for the business, and also don't try and do everything. Some clients come to me and they say, I want to do a website, I want to do blogging, I want to do LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, etc., etc. But all those channels takes time and effort, and it depends on your budget. If you've got a huge budget, then by all means do that. But I think you have to be selective, and you have to base it on your target. You have to base it on your target market and where your clients are looking for you, and that's where you should channel your efforts.
Right. Okay, great. Just whilst we're talking, Kevin, just to remind those of you watching this afternoon, do fire your questions in. There's a Q&A button at the bottom of, well, it's the bottom of my screen. It's probably at the bottom of your screen, might be at the side. Do actually ask us some questions. Obviously, if you're asking us the questions, then we can ensure that the sort of question that I'm asking Kevin are the ones that are most relevant to you and the ones that you want the answers to. So I was just thinking, Kevin, there's probably a few businesses at the moment who, for whatever reason, aren't as busy as they might normally be. What sort of things could they be taking the opportunity to look at on their website if they maybe don't normally have a chance to look at their website? Anything particular points they should be looking at?
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent question. If you've got time on your hands and you want to make some enhancements to your website, there's stuff you can do from a content point of view, a publishing point of view, a tech point of view, and an SEO point of view, perhaps. Now, if you want to enhance your website ready for sort of the bounce back, I think there's some real tech issues that you can address during this time. Just some fundamental stuff. For example, do you have an SSL certificate, which gives you HTTPS on your website? It's just something that fundamentally customers expect now. Another thing would be, is your website mobile responsive? Maybe you've got a wonderful desktop website, but it doesn't work on mobile. And maybe now it's time to consider doing something to optimize it for mobile. And we'll talk more about that later. But also from a technical point of view, how fast is your website? If you're using something like WordPress, could you put a caching solution like WP Cache or WP Rocket on there to speed that up for clients? And then moving into sort of the organic SEO point of view, are your meta tags correct? Are your headings correct? I expect most of the audience here knows about meta tags, but there's a tool called Yoast for WordPress. Yoast is an excellent tool because it allows you to optimize the content on your website. I mean, I think we were having a brief discussion about what's the level of content that you should have on each web page. and I think Yoast recommends it's 500 to 800 words. But obviously, it depends what type of page it is. But something like Yoast will not only help you put the right amount of content on your web page and maybe use Grammarly to help fix any typos, but Yoast will help you improve the readability and help you optimize the content in terms of putting headings and breakpoints and that alike, and make it easy to read and that kind of thing. So I think that kind of moves on to SEO and driving traffic to your website. Right. Because if you haven't got a lot of business at the moment, maybe now is the opportunity to really try and push for additional traffic to your website. And generate new business. And there's kind of the three pillars to that are organic search, which obviously takes a longer time, but maybe that's time to invest some effort into that now. Social media and social media boosting and pay-per-click. So like ads on Google and that kind of thing.
Okay. So just for the benefit of those maybe who aren't quite so literate on websites, could you just quickly explain what a meta tag is, and also just to confirm what SEO means for some people that may or may not know what it means?
Yeah, absolutely. So SEO is search engine optimization, and it's around making sure the code on your website is optimized or compliant or appropriately structured, and the content's appropriately structured for search engines such as Google and Bing and DuckDuckGo to be able to search, to crawl your website, to look at it and find the content and index it appropriately so clients can find it. So SEO, they say, like you, obviously the ideal would be to be number one on search for your keywords. But obviously the SEO, that's about the organic appearing in search engine, and you want to try and target for your keywords to be in like the top 10. Meta tags are part of the code of the website. So in order to optimize your website, a website is built out of code or scripts, and the fundamental piece of that is HTML or hypertext markup language, which is the building block of all websites. And within HTML, you have a header section where you can define what are called meta tags. And meta is just peripheral additional information about a website, which is stuff like, what is this website? What does it do? What is the description of the website? What are the keywords about the website? And that allows the robots that are part of the search engines to crawl the website and digest the content on your website and to understand what your website's about and help present that informatively to your customers. That's
directly linked to the search engines.
Absolutely. So in the good old days of the start of the internet, there were ways of gaming the system, like putting your keyword thousands of times in the keywords fields. Google has obviously got smart to that. There is no direct correlation. You can't say these exact rules will give you this exact result in a search engine. But for example, the description that you put in your description meta tag is often the description that you'll see on the in coming up in the search engine results description on Google. That's often where it will get it from. But if you haven't provided those descriptions on every page of your website, then Google will either not be able to put anything there, or will try and guess based on the content of your website. So it's always beneficial to, if you can take the actions to be as complete and score as well from an SEO point of view as you can, because it gives you advantages in terms of SEO, search engine optimization, and appearing in search engines.
Okay, great. And obviously it's appearing in a search engine. I mean, for certain types of businesses, I guess, as you say, then there's not much chance of appearing at the top of the search engines. But for other ones, particularly if someone types in Brentwood, obviously, then that would mean that hopefully you might come up higher in the search engine if they were looking for a local company.
So this is a really fantastic question, because a lot of people say, "Oh, I want to be number one," but what do you want to be number one for? So, I mean, what keywords do you want to be number one for? Because yes, it's true that I personally am not going to get to number one for web design globally or web design in the UK. I mean, trying to do that would require a huge budget. But I always advise quite a simple search engine optimization strategy for businesses, especially new businesses without any domain legitimacy or the domain authority, sorry, and that are completely new. Start small. Always start small. So while I can't get web design UK, where I live is a place called Langdon Hills, which is a small area in Basildon. So a couple of years ago, I optimized my content and created a page based on web design, Langdon Hills. And what I did is I published content, I optimized the content, and I took actions based on those keywords, and I was able to be successful. And I'm now #1 for web design Langdon Hills. Once I'd created that first kind of organic building block, then I started working on Basildon, and I'm now in the top 3 from Basildon. And because I've done Basildon, now I'm working on different areas in Essex, and I'm now in the top 100 for Essex. So do you see what I mean? Although, so trying to go for like a big, like trying to achieve something like overnight is difficult. Doing the small building blocks is really important. And I saw one of the questions on the Q&A is asking whether you should have multiple pages for multiple areas. And I think there is a lot of debate whether that's appropriate or not. What I would say is that I think the person asked, should you have a page on lockdown Basildon, lockdown Brentwood? I would say during COVID-19, it's probably best not to have a huge amount of content that talks about the lockdown or COVID-19, other than if you're like saying stuff around what you're doing as a business. Because I've had some experience with trying to buy a domain name related to the pandemic, or building a website, a web page specific to pandemic can actually be detrimental to your Google search engine results. So I wouldn't advise that, but I would advise having pages specific to areas is important, with the caveat that don't just make your homepage and then duplicate it and say this is a Basildon homepage, and duplicate and say this is a Benfleet homepage. If you're creating another page optimized for a particular location, it has to have unique content. So it has to talk about Basildon and why that's relevant to the client, and have content relevant to it. So don't just duplicate and use the keywords. It has to have relevant content. That would be my recommendation.
Okay, so just one question, coming back to the point about being #1 in Langdon Hills and in the top, whatever it was in Basildon. Is that based on people who type in Langdon Hills website, or is it based on people who live in Langdon Hills when they're searching? Do they have to put that Langdon Hills?
No. So I'm talking about the actual keywords. So specifically, right. So if someone was saying web designer Langdon Hills, so they can be anywhere in the world, but if they type that in, yeah, that's what they'll find. Yeah, there is some geographical enhancements. Then, obviously, any business should be registered for Google businesses. So you should be on the map for your local businesses. That gives you advantage. You can populate that with content, and that's certainly something you can do during the downtime, and that helps. Yeah, definitely. Your search performance. And that's free, isn't it? And that's free. Not only is it free, they're bringing on tools that allows you to create a little web page using Google Local Business. So if you're not already online, that is a good way of getting a kind of a low cost, quick web presence up and running. Yeah, so Google businesses, everyone should be on there really. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we talked sort of about search engine optimization. What about analytics then, in terms of analyzing how successful your website is? Is that something you would do, or is that something you'd encourage a client to do themselves? I mean both, absolutely, and there are experts out there that can provide more analysis. But fundamentally, I urge everyone on this call, if you haven't got an analytics solution like Google Analytics or Facebook Pixel on your website, you should go ahead, create yourself an account and get that on your website. Because fundamentally, you need to know how many people are visiting your website, what they're doing on your website, and what they're looking at. It might be advantageous. It might be that you're creating some wonderful content on pages, but if no one's viewing it, is it right that your business should be putting the effort into creating that content? So, and looking at the analytics is really important. It gives you the trend of is your traffic going up over time or going down, but it also gives you stuff like bounce rates. And bounce rates is the people that come to your website and then just disappear without looking at anything. And again, these are things that once you know what they are, then you can start taking actions to improve the performance of your website. There's also things like goals and funnels. So in Google Analytics, you can set up user journeys where, for example, if your entry is on your home page, you then want them to click on particular call to actions to go to a contact page. Then you want them to fill in a contact page and then go to a thank you page, or maybe fill in some details and download an ebook. You can set those as like funnels, and the goal can be completing that and getting a thank you page, because it's those then can be fed into the analytics to show how your website's performing. And conversely, if you then wanted to do some digital marketing, you wanted to put some PPC or paid per click adverts on Google or on Facebook, you can link that through to how they're performing and how many people are submitting inquiries and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. In actual fact, it's good that you mentioned pay-per-click, because we've got a question about this from a travel company. So obviously, as I say, they're in a very competitive industry. How can they benefit from pay-per-click without spending a fortune?
I mean, that's a really good question. I would say my recommendation would be to go to an expert in this space who has expertise in the travel industry pay-per-click, because it is so competitive. You want someone that's very expert and has a good methodology for getting good performance in that space, and typically they'll have experience of how much kind of budget you'd be looking at to achieve results. And this is kind of this is also a generic answer for anyone. There are a number of companies out there that advertise pay-per-click services that will take an admin fee and they'll take actions, and you'll see traffic, but what's the result? If you're going to do pay-per-click, you have to have a coherent strategy, you have to have very robust analytics, and you have to know that what you're investing, you're getting a return on that investment. So you know that if you're going to invest £500 a month on pay-per-click, you're generating how X number of inquiries and Y amount of business. There are actually a number of businesses in the Brentwood Chamber that also support stuff like this. Like 24 Fingers is an excellent company, and I know some London-based agencies that do something specifically. So if you're after some of those names, then reach out to me afterwards, and I can do some referrals for you.
Okay, great, thanks. One other thing, just to again remind you, if you have got any other questions, then do hit the quick Q&A button, and we'll be happy to. I'll be happy to ask the questions, and I'm sure Kevin will be happy to answer them. You said earlier on you're going to talk about people taking payments on website, which I guess is becoming more common and also more simple, and also of course the consumers are becoming more and more used to buying stuff online, which again is a significant increase during the present crisis. There's a lot more people willing to buy online, and maybe some people buying online for the first time. So what's involved in actually, obviously depending on what your type of business is, what's involved in accepting payments and accepting bookings on your website? Is it complicated, and is that something you can help with?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one of our specialisms, is integrating payments with websites. Just because you've got a website doesn't mean you're excluded from taking payments, and you can retrofit payments into a website. I've actually got a handy slide that I prepared earlier. If you wouldn't mind bringing to the.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I'll bring that up on the screen, and you can talk us through it.
And I'd like to talk through that, if that's
okay. Right, here we go.
It's a little it's a little user flow. So I want to take payments, and so these are just some of the questions that I suggest that you'd be asking. So how often are you taking payments? Is it one-off payments? Is it a transactional website, or a recurring? Because, for example, WordPress, there's a thing called MemberPress, which integrates with the Payments Gateway Stripe, which is an amazing tool that allows you to turn your website into a subscription-based website. And that could be subscription from a digital service or some kind of service provided, or even a product. And then if it's one-off, which channels are you sending through? We talked about, is a website absolutely essential? Now, for some businesses, you can be taking payments for your products pretty much overnight, stuff like eBay, Amazon, not on the high street. And then over the phone. So yes, it's important to be able to take payments on your website, but a tactical way of taking payments kind of immediately would be something like through Square. They have, there is a Square dongle you can get to take person present payments, not that relevant right now, but they have an online virtual terminal which allows you to take credit card payments over the phone, which could be really important if your business needs to take payments in that way. But you want a client-facing payments acceptance, then maybe it's through your own website. Is it a new website? If it is, I would suggest building on a platform like Shopify or BigCommerce. There's some really interesting and excellent e-com platforms out there. But is it existing? Do you need a shopping cart? If not, you can actually quickly, rapidly put payments acceptance using like PayPal buttons on your website. But if you do need a shopping cart, there's things like WooCommerce, which allows you to integrate payments in your website. And then if it's bespoke, maybe take payments on Braintree, Stripe, or PayPal. That's a real whistle stop tour. But I just wanted to give a kind of an overview of some of the decision making that one needs to make around taking payments. Fundamentally, payments does seem to laymen, if you haven't done payments, it can seem a bit scary, a bit black box. But let me assure you, there are solutions out there that make it really easy for you to take payments, and it should be easy to receive payments. And then obviously you need to make sure that your website's secure, you've got an SSL certificate, and then you want to mitigate against online fraud and chargebacks and that kind of thing. And I'm absolutely happy to talk about any of those topics in detail.
Okay, so presumably there's two expenses. There's the expense of getting yourself set up as a online seller, and then presumably there's an ongoing payment that you make to whichever provider you're using.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So it depends how you're taking the payments. If you're going with someone like Shopify, you essentially pay a hosting fee for Shopify, and then you pay a per transaction fee. Now, a lot of payments providers now don't have an upfront setup cost. I think Square may do, but you can, if you get savvy, I think you can get that waived. In terms of the taking payments, you typically have what is consolidated in a transaction fee. So if you're selling something for £100, you might be paying 2 to 3% in transaction fees, which includes the credit card fee and the fee to the payments gateway and the payments provider. So it is something to bear in mind that if you're taking payments online, part of that acceptance, especially on the virtual terminal, will go to the payments provider. But conversely, taking a transaction for £100 and paying £3 to a payments provider is better than not being able to take the payment.
Yeah, sure, definitely. Yeah. Okay, so that all sounds. So basically, you're a specialist in that area, so you'd recommend that someone's interested in moving into that field that they contact you.
I mean, thank you for the comment. Yeah, absolutely. I've been a payments professional for WellPay for 4 years. Specialising in payments innovation. So, but I've been exposed to a number of payments gateways and payment solutions, and that is one of the things that we Digital Technology Labs pride ourselves in being able to support our clients with.
Yeah, and I know everything's fast changing anyway in the digital world, but presumably payment acceptance is something that's fast changing more so than even other things, with more and more providers.
It's interesting. It's an interesting industry. There's a lot of change. There's a lot of innovation, but there's some things in the industry do remain the same for quite a while. So, but there are some real interesting players in the space, and whilst something like WooCommerce was very big, Shopify is a massively up and coming platform, and but there's not just Shopify. All the website builders are trying to get into the market. I think Wix have a basic e-com solution now. Squarespace have an increasingly sophisticated e-com offering for you, and there's many other platforms out there as well. It is important that that when you select your provider, that you ensure that obviously high security, and you have full access to that company in case something goes wrong, if there's fraud or chargebacks and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned earlier on about mobile compatibility, which obviously becoming more important. Is it very complicated to make sure your website is it like having two different websites, one for the computers and one for mobiles, or how does it work?
So there's two trains of thought. Some in some web design, they think that websites should be built from the ground up on both platforms, but mobile first design or mobile responsive design is the ethos that you should build once, but it should be responsive to multiple platforms. So you build once and it can respond to desktop, to mobile, to tablet, maybe even to kind of digital TV and all that kind of stuff. Now, right. from a business point of view, I think investing once to build a website is actually more efficient than building twice. Also, if you have a separate, I mean, in the early days of mobile, businesses were building, you see www.forward and then mob.forward, for example. Yeah, so there'd be a separate, but basically search engines do like you're at a disadvantage if you have separate websites. Yeah. So definitely the trend is to have the same look and feel and the same content. And you know what? Some people say mobile responsive means that if you present your content on your mobile, you have to have a less experience or you present less content. And I'm of the philosophy that you can present the same content and have the same functionality, but you just have to get quite smart with how that's designed and how that's laid out and that kind of thing for mobile.
Yeah, so it's part of it is the layout and the way in which the information is presented rather than the amount of information. Yeah,
but I have to admit that taking a website and retrofitting mobile responsiveness is possible. It is possible, but sometimes you have to bite the bullet and say, my website's kind of a bit old. Maybe it's time to build a new website from scratch from mobile first, mobile responsive. Yeah. Or buy a kind of a premium template and build it off of that. We have done some work with some clients to take a website and introduce mobile responsiveness. But that's something that we've done kind of previously. Now more so, it's kind of we recommend building on new technologies and new platforms.
Yeah. Okay. And just one other question about photos and videos. And obviously photos are very good on a website because they attract people's attention, but is it good to have videos on websites, or are you better off just having a link to YouTube for your videos, or what's your view on videos?
I think good photography or good illustration is really important, and we've got some great photographers in the Brentwood Chamber, like Tina Wing Photography and Carmel Jane Photography, for example. I am a big fan of video content. A lot of user experience and website research shows that video content on a website does have a positive impact on your customers and leads to higher engagement rates and higher conversion rates.
Right.
Again, I would say there's a few caveats, because whilst video content is good, it's really important that it's relevant and professional and high quality. Remember, video is essentially your shop window, and you have to get your personality across. We recently did a video shoot with Carmel Jane Photography, and we had a video on our website, and one of my clients said to me, if we'd gone off based on the video, we wouldn't have worked with you. And I was like, wow. And now we've got a video that they love and they would go with us through working with Carmel. The video previously, although the content was good, the quality of the sound, the lighting, the video quality just weren't, and the background wasn't good enough. So with Carmel, we hired a studio in London, and they helped us do a video, and it's now a very good professional video, and actually a kind of a good reasonable price that we were able to achieve that point of view. But it's if you're going to go for a hero video on your website, I would say really important to have it high quality, but you can augment that with just your smartphone videos and stuff like that. But if you're doing video blogging, I would do that through the blogging part or through YouTube and stuff like that to complement a hero image or a high quality video, sorry.
Right, okay, brilliant, good. Well, I think that's certainly covered a fair amount of things, and as far as I can see, we've answered pretty much everyone's questions on that. So unless there's anything particularly you wanted to pick up on, Kevin, I think that's probably a good place to sort of wrap things up.
No, I'll just say thank you for the opportunity. Some lovely questions, and I hope everyone enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. Yeah, and thank you very much. Obviously your knowledge shines through, and I'm sure people will be keen to be in touch with you. I'm just going to share the screen with your contact details so that people know how to contact you if they do want to find out more about you, about what you were saying. And if you've got any particular questions which come up after the webinar's finished, then do feel free to send Kevin an email, or obviously look for his website. I'm sure they'll be going to look at his website now to see what you think of it. And I certainly looked at it earlier on, and it is you know, a good example of a website. But yeah, just one final question. Actually, I was just thinking, Kevin. So the very basics. If someone's just starting out in business, how simple? And I guess the key question is, how much would it cost just to get a sort of very simple website up and running?
Yeah, I mean, it does vary. There are some web designers rushing to the bottom, but I think you're looking at, for a basic website and a reputable web designer, you're looking at kind of £500 to £1,000 for a website build project. So if you have the budget to invest in marketing, we'd love to help. And obviously there's other web designers out there. But there are ways to get online yourself if you don't have the budget, but you have the time. So, for example, Wix or Squarespace are a good place to start.
Okay, brilliant. Right, well, great. Thanks very much for that, Kevin. And look forward to seeing you again in the future, and wish you all the best, and hope you manage to come through all this and come out the other side as a stronger and more resilient business model. And as I say to everyone watching this afternoon, if you've got any questions to Kevin, I'm sure I'll be happy to hear from you. I just want to tell all of you about our next webinar. Well, I'll certainly tell you the date of our next webinar. We haven't actually got the presenters' details confirmed yet, so I won't actually flag that up until we know it's definite. But it's next Tuesday. As I say, Friday we're skipping as it's a bank holiday. The next webinar is next Tuesday, 12th of May at 9:30 a.m. Details will of course be on our chamber website. And really just like to say to you, thanks very much for joining us this afternoon. If you do want to watch it on YouTube, if you missed the beginning, or you had to get distracted during the presentation, or you just want to sort of recap on it, then details of the YouTube link will be sent out to you by email automatically from Zoom, and that should be available. I'm guessing sometime tomorrow that will be available for you. So thanks very much for watching, and wish you all a pleasant afternoon, what's left of it, and look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Thank you. Goodbye.